right, we're going to get started here. I'm going to start passing around a sign-in sheet. You also received the notes from the last meeting in the email, and you have it here in front of you. Yes.
And I don't care, but everybody in the room should know that it's being videotaped. There should be a disclaimer on the door. Just tell us when you're doing this, okay? Because people need to know. No, I know, whoever's doing it, just so we know, because everybody should know that. That's all.
Yeah, no big deal.
So we'll keep this moving around with the sign-in.
I think we all think
Everybody's here.
Yes, everybody get back signed up.
Were there any corrections to the notes from the last meeting? All right, hearing none, we'll go into a discussion, I guess, on Mark's progress report. Mark, can you hear us okay? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you guys hear us?
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
So we were able to send, are you going to go ahead, Matt? Go ahead.
Okay. So, anyway, based on the progress report, some of the things are kind of the same as they have been as far as mail surveys or the inspections, and then obviously, we've been able to get out there and then, but one of the main things that we've done last meeting was we went to the some of us representatives from each municipality went to the DEP office in Larkspur, met and discussed with the DEP things about the tar, and then the other big thing that we've accomplished is the mapping of the inspection results, which is GIS, which is important to help visualize kind of where it needs areas, as well as getting forward, moving with, as Mark said in his email, with trying to work on generating or designing the alternatives for possible sewage routes, and being able to get cost estimates, as well as what the cost would be for individual users, and we can kind of move forward and decide how we want to progress with things, and then ultimately still municipalities are still comfortable with, what's going forward with the sewage, and if we want to start sending things out to the DEP with updates, because once you start sending them updates, they think that something needs action. That Europe was kind of more committed to it than so anyway, that's pretty much what the past month's accomplishments, and then just as far as next month, the number one thing that we're going to be working on is designing the alternatives based on the GIS maps and estimate the cost of them. That's from there we can discuss next stakeholder meeting where we want to proceed from there.
So when you look at the map that is included in the disbursement, I don't know if you guys have smaller copies of that or a larger print, but you should have that electronically within a PDF that you could go back to and take a look at. That actually has each of the locations where we did the on-site survey. It's either a red or a green dot. The red is the suspected and malfunction, and that is mostly just due to the definition of what a cesspool is. By definition, it's suspected unless you confirm that it's functioning. You can see the green dots are confirmed functioning. And when I look at that, I see more of a shotgun pattern with, some areas defining pattern, but it's not, specifically showing certain regions of either borough that have more failures or more functioning septic systems than in the other part. We know some things from just being boots on the ground. I know Matt, when he was out there, knows certain streets that seemed like people were looking for sewer more than other areas. So, we'll keep that in mind as we pull together the alternative analysis and get that pricing done. The big thing, with this is we're not done with the needs assessments. The two areas that still need are Westfall and Milford Township, but the two boroughs are done. our plan is to, you know, based after that DEP meeting, is to kind of set that aside since it's been snowing anyway, so the last couple days there or not, but it's here. And because it's not just the snow on the ground, it's also with the grass not growing and things of that nature, it's a little difficult to do the on-site. And we feel we have enough to generate a preliminary and alternatives analysis and costing, so we can figure out what the tapping fees might look like with some math behind it, just preliminary numbers, not the final number, and same thing for cost of the system and user rates. Then we would meet with the stakeholders group after that, go through those numbers in a draft form, see where everybody's at. We want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the status of the project before we start dispersing all kinds of information to the department. And that's kind of one of these. We talked about that a little bit at DEP, and they even said so. They're saying, you know, if you're not 100% committed to moving forward with sewer, don't send it to us. You know, so that's where we want to make sure we're keeping proper checks and balances. Our goal is to have that assessment and that information at this coming February meeting, so it would be the first Wednesday of February. And then I would print everything out and come up to review that, because it's a pretty big meeting to go through everything and see where everything stands. And then immediately after that, try to get that, if you know, progressing that direction, get that meeting set up with DEP and DRDC like we talked about this last meeting with DEP, again, to go from there. That's basically where we're at. Is there any questions, comments, concerns that we can address?
Anyone?
So just a housekeeping issue, could we post this video on the Pike County website?
I gotta get the IT here to do that.
Okay. But if not, it'll go up on YouTube, but it would be nice to have it on the Pike County.
Just easier to go to YouTube. Because here's the thing, if we start to do that, then where do I stop it? Which ones don't I post?
Fair
Which
point.
ones don't have video, right? So-
Except that nobody really videotapes, but that's okay. It's a fair point. Can we do more questions or?
Sure, yeah.
For HRG on the line, Moon Valley was not in the original scope of this project. When did that get added?
It was when
Is
we were
Moon
drawing
Valley up
the
to-
circles.
That's off the 3-lane up,
You're talking about Moon Valley Development, or you're talking about Moon Valley Road?
Moon Valley Falls.
Moon Valley Falls?
right, thank you.
Penny, I think, asked for that to be added at some point.
Yes, you did.
Because they have central sewer now, don't they?
Yes.
Yes.
It was early on in the process.
So the supervisors asked for that at some point.
Okay, at some point.
Well, Moon Valley was brought up, and then we talked about how it wasn't in the original scoping, and then we generated a costing to add that in, and it was never moved forward to add that in, because it's not just adding it in with no additional cost, it's additional assessments. So Penny brought it up, we costed, I think it was another $3,000 to $6,000 or something, I'd have to, don't quote me on that, to add that into the project. It's not too late, we can still add it in, but, you know, like everything else, I want heated seats in my car, but I gotta pay for it too. So that's where we're at.
Thank you for that. So that would be an additional $3,000 to $6,000 that the township would have to bear, right?
Well, we don't know, but, you know, the initial funding for this whole thing came through Act 13 funds. We'd have to analyze that and see. I gotta check those accounts.
Okay.
But, I mean, it's a possibility. I'm just looking here, it looks like it was brought up on June 5th. I'm just looking at the minutes here about.
Yeah.
Mark asked if Moon Valley Falls is too far out of the sewer. Mark's Pat's answer, that if you want to sewer that area, would include it in the area. Currently, they have their own sewer, but it's not doing well. This is comments from, I'm not sure I know who, probably from Penny. So I think it was just left like that because they do have sewer at that moment,
Yes,
right?
they
They do. So I guess it's up to the township supervisors if they want to entertain us adding it to it. But right now, they're included in a central sewage system. Could always be added later, correct, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, once the plan gets moved through, you would do, honestly, just a component 3M to amend. The the 537 process is a living document. You know, it's not like, oh, you do this and you're once and you're done forever. You'll have this bounded area that this 537 is going to study. This is the area that, it's our study area on the mapping that we have. And if any development or any centralized sewer needs are needed outside that bounding area, there's a couple of mechanisms to add that in. If it's a private entity, they could submit a planning module to the township for consideration. The township could review and approve it. And usually that's funded by the private entity. If it's the municipality that wants to expand the area, then that's called a component 3M. And then either are mechanisms to amend, to basically tack on this additional area to the master 537 plan. So, and that will continue over forever. I mean, that's how that works. Ultimately, there's larger milestones then, way down the line, possibly where you do larger 537 efforts, but that's what this is. That's what we're doing right now. So maybe in 30, 40 years, there'd be another 537 plan, but in between the two, big 537 efforts, you have these planning modules and component 3M things that are mechanisms to make little amendments and add in areas here and there that need it.
All right, thank you for that. One last question. So, as part of the TAR, will you be able to give residents some estimate ranges for connection, not just the 1750 hookup, but what this typically costs? I'm looking at numbers from anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000, and depending on the type of system you use, it could be up to 20,000. So will that be described in the TAR so that we have some idea of what homeowners can anticipate?
Were you able to hear that, Mark?
So the 537 plan will go through the costing, the final plan. There is this thing that we're going to happen in between here, where we're going to have draft numbers and draft documents that are really not for larger public release. They're still in draft. I mean, it's for the stakeholders, it's for elected municipal officials, but we got to make sure we don't get carried away with getting too much draft information out there. Not that we're trying to hide anything, it's just, it's hard to explain to the public what the draft is, and the draft can change. Sometimes people, can struggle with that. But the final document will definitely have a estimated tapping fee, estimated rates in the planning final form. Along the way, the goal is to have the elected municipal officials be looking at these numbers and saying, yes, speaking, at the end of the day, elected municipal officials are there to speak for their constituency, to say, yes, these are numbers that, I think our township or borough is expecting and is acceptable. And that's the process of going through the 537 planning in itself. If we get to spots where numbers, aren't where people think they need to be, well, then we need to look and work on that. Is there ways to do things differently to bring those into expectations? On the same breath, we have to make sure we have reasonable expectations. So we talked about the numbers up front. I think the numbers that Westfall has and for rates and tapping fees and things of that nature are a reasonable starting point. But we are building quite a bit of sewer extension that is going to cost some funds. Ultimately, it's a work in process. All the time we're trying to push the numbers down, push the expenses down. When we get grants to offset things of that nature. So they're always in a planning number state until you get those bids back from construction to go build this thing. So with proper planning and proper, just understanding of how numbers are developing as you're going along, and you're trying to keep those within budgets, within expectations, within ranges. You're trying to keep your costs pushed down and just get to that end, but they are always fluctuating here and there. A big part of that is, grants and things of that nature, how much assistance the area is able to acquire to help build this thing. So I hope I didn't expand on that too much, but to understand that the plan, the final 537 plan will have estimated costs for tapping fees, for rates. We're going to have some draft numbers in between now and when that final plan is put out for public release. That's another thing that's really important to understand, that the plan that the elected officials say, yes, this looks like a good plan, this, good plan for my community, that has to go out for a 30-day public comment period where we make public presentations on the plan, have this information, address questions, comments, concerns, and then take the plan back and do we need to make any revisions to it based on the public input. So it's that, and that's a required process. The DEP won't even look at the plan until that's done. And we have to officially respond to those comments. So it's built into the mechanisms to make sure that the public's aware of the documents going into the DEP in final form, in final planning form. And, that's kind of the stream along the way.
So thank you for that feedback, but what I'm hearing is it's going to be, the cost that you're including is going to be the tapping fee and the annual rate. It will not include anything like grinder pumps, somebody coming in to pump out your existing cesspool, the damage to yards, fence, shrubs, whatever. You're just going with those two, so it's not a complete cost, right?
Yeah, so I can see what we can pull together. What's tricky about that is people's situations are different. Many times when communities go, so you can't say, you can look at ranges, but it depends on, your septic tank versus somebody else's, and do they have to repair, do fence work, do they have to go across driveways or not, do they get a connection, or do they have a grinder pump or not, things of that nature. Who's purchasing the grinder pump if that's even required. So it varies. The other thing that's really tricky about that, I'll talk to my team to see if we can pull some reasonable ranges together so we have some understanding of that, because obviously that's an important question. I don't know that's not an official thing that would be in the 537 plan, but it's something we can see if we can include around the fringes, or just at least have that information for public meetings. The other thing that I'm trying to get to that is, many times in communities, a local contractor or a local, in some communities, it's a local person that does have a license and is able to do public, not public for a municipality, but is licensed to do work in a construction way that has proper insurance and things of that nature for the state, that they will start, making a little business of it to go around and do these sewer tie-ins for people. To some extent, it takes a person that's handy and has a backhoe, and a lot of times that has a pretty decent impact on the costing. If that comes together, which typically it does, the costs go down because the person doesn't have a ton of overhead, things of that nature. So.
Yeah, but Mark, the popular ends up.
Numbers together.
Popular ends up,
Okay.
to add to what you're looking at there, because you're going to have people with finished basements, most of the lines are going to be in front, and they're going to have to move the sewage line from the back of the house to the front of the house or business. Some of the businesses are going to be on that grade slab. So the cost to that could vary a great deal, because you got to abandon the old system, move the plumbing inside the house. If they have finished basements, that's an issue too. So when you look at that, you're going to have to look at all the angles on that too, what it's going to cost the homeowner.
Yeah, and that's what makes it really difficult. So our ranges might have quite a range. I think what's maybe more appropriate as we get closer to this, and we're getting towards a draft public, comment period, is, folks with that concern, call a plumber and say, hey, we understand sewers, our community is looking at sewer. I'd like to get a quote from you if we need to, discontinue our existing long-lot septic system and come out to the street. Give me a quote. The quotes usually are free, and it's site-specific.
Well, they would need to do that before this goes in place, because once it's in place, if we're using funding, they're going to have to hook up.
I mean, one thing
Yeah,
about
that's
this
once we go out to the
is,
public comment.
I think as long as the public, the homeowners, understand that it's not just a $1,750 hookup fee and probably $800 to $1,200 a year usage fee, but there are other costs, and even if you don't put a dollar sign to it, kind of go through what Bob just did, if you have the plumbing here, this is not going to be a trivial expense to most homeowners. And they should know. Thank you.
Mark, it's Frank. You are going to identify where the pipes are going in the streets, whether it's the streets or the alleys, correct? Going along the residences? Because that will have an effect on people. They go down the alleys, it's closer to most people's septic, they don't have to rearrange.
You don't have to rearrange inside the house.
Yeah, so you will identify where, at least at that point, you expect all the lines to go down, right?
Yeah, our alternatives analysis will have general layout. It's not going to be, it's going to be a line on a street. It's not going to necessarily be exactly where the line needs to go, but you're going to be looking at mapping,
I think we will
not at
plan
the
to,
design level, but you're going to be looking at general level, and it will show generally where the lines will be.
yeah, because we were
Might
looking
not
at,
be on the left or the right side of the road, just to be on the road. So.
we were looking, instead putting the alleys, which sort of divide the properties, and most people's septic systems today are in that back area. So it would be relatively easy for them to hook up. Not everybody, but for most people, I think it would be relatively easy.
From Milford Borough.
Yeah,
In
the
Milford.
the key thing with this whole process that and most of engineering process is, well, which way are we going to do this? And the answer is the least expensive way that achieves the objective. That's always the way. And that's just how it guides everything. I mean, that's how you want to do, that's how you do engineering. How do I get across this river? The least expensive way possible, that gets me across the river. That's how.
So just, if I may, to Frank's point, yes, it would be easier. That's a great suggestion. But I still want to point out that it's going to be a cost for the homeowner. It's not going to be insignificant. It's easy, yes, but I don't want that to be the word. We're going down the alley, so now it's, your cost will be reduced. Yes, it will. But it's still going to be a cost that's incurred. And it's not just the connection fee, and it's not just the annual fee. That's my point.
I think we all know that. It's going to be a cost. You know that.
Yeah, a couple of timing questions. What's the earliest that the hearing could take place? In other words, the hearing, I assume, is by municipality. So what's the earliest a hearing could take place that precedes DEP? I mean, are we talking this year? Just as an estimate.
You're talking about the public comment period?
Well, the public hearing, once you have every...
Yes, Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, so the public comment period, it would be this year. I mean, it's up to the towns, but from what my perception of it, it would be this year. Sometime probably spring, late spring,
Well,
early summer.
and also, as we just...
Yeah, Corey and I've also discussed it around that. I mean, some of it depends on, when the DEP, gets things approved, or, once we have the alternatives, if, the municipalities, reviewing them want us to change some things, or depending on, different things like that, they can get delayed, but definitely would expect by this year, probably late spring or summer.
Also, in the last meeting, I think we discussed that the commercial district in Milford Borough would precede the residential district. How much separation from the commercial to the residential? Is that 6 months, a year, 2 years? Just as an estimate.
That's yet to be determined.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna be set, it's the community's plan. So it's what the community will want it to be. And then it gets checked by the department.
Bill, just for yourself, if it's coming down the alley, let's say, as an example, and it's behind, you're gonna have your business community right there, and you're gonna have some residentials right there. It would make sense for the residential people, while they're in that alley working, to grab those sewer lines, so you don't have to come back a second time. So
Would that be voluntary?
that's out of my, I'm just looking at it as a perspective as somebody who would be putting this in.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
You know, like myself, if there's a residential and business back to back, and the lines there, it would make sense to grab them both. But that's up to the powers that be to do that.
Question,
The borough.
Yeah, what's important to realize is that the main driver is the getting commercial businesses served. That's been the message I've heard from the communities clear, is that there's an economic burden that's currently on many of the businesses through the central corridors of each borough that is being stifled and honestly, it seems to me, and it's happened in other towns, they're having it up in Holly now, it starts to erode the town because the commercial starts to dither away, and then people, you need the commercial for the economics of the area. So that's really the main concern. Now, is this an immediate concern that, well, everything's fine today? It's like, yes, it is, but it takes sewer 10, 15, 20 years to build. So it takes a long time. You have to, they want to have many communities we serve, they want to have a nice tree for some shade, for using an analogy, in 15 to 20 years. We got to plant that tree today. Because it takes a long time. It takes a long time to figure out how to fund this stuff, looking for grants, aggressively chasing these things. So that's what this is the main driver for this project. The needs of residentials around the area is being looked at as well, and it's all part of the kind of the master plan. The scheduling and costing and stuff like that is a work in progress, and that's what we're starting to figure out now. And go kind of one step at a time here, and then ultimately that gets, once the elected officials are comfortable with how the plan is written and how it's looking, then that goes out to public comment. We receive public feedback, and then if we have to make changes, we go ahead and make those changes. And if everything's in generally looking in good order, then that gets submitted to the DEP, which they have to review and approve the socioeconomic benefit to the plan itself as well. Keeping their eye on making sure costs are being contained, fees are reasonable, that there is a sewer need for the commercial and residential things of that nature. So there's a number of checks and balance in the process that was established by the state in the 60s for how you go through this to get to a town with no public sewer to a town with public sewer.
Anyone else?
Good for another month. Good.
Next one is February 5th. Mark, you have anything else?
Nope, unless there's anything, I'm good.
Okay.
See you in a month.
See you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. See you, Matt.